Something that bothers me, right, is when you're listening to a discussion between people, it's supposed to be civil. No matter what perspective you have, what side of the discussion your beliefs lie on, it should be civil. And even if you're dealing with somebody who is hard to work with, you should not resort to insulting, because all that does is make it worse. By insulting somebody, you're not going to make them more civil. You're going to trigger them, they're going to become defensive, and the conversation is going to go nowhere, right? If you're complaining about a scenario and you invite somebody into a discussion who lies on the opposite side of that scenario, just because you have a difference of perspective doesn't mean you need to resort to insulting. Like, I understand that what that person may be saying is triggering, but it doesn't make us any better when we behave like that person. How can I condemn the actions of that person when I am being petty and I am no longer listening to them and I am demeaning their character? I know that it's hard. It's hard not to take things offensive, and it's hard to deal with people that are hard to deal with. But making an effort, right? That's what counts. You don't show someone that you're better than them or that your ideology is better than them by saying demeaning things, demasculating them, or, and I'm not just talking about men, I'm talking about women too. I just don't know what the female version of that word is, right? Saying somebody has small body parts, or somebody is short, or somebody must be stupid because they don't understand your perspective. That's not true. And take for example, why do racist people exist? Does it suck that there's racist people? Yes it does. But you have to take into consideration that person was raised that way. Their parents, their teachers, they had influences in their life that brought them up that way. They were conditioned that way and desensitized to believe that the way that they think about the world and the people is right. That is their truth. And you don't disassemble that by insulting them or being petty. You disassemble it by broadening their perspective. Right? Here's a prime example on the opposite side. I was fortunate enough to be born into a very cultural, dense community in San Diego, right? I love San Diego. It's a huge melting pot, lots of culture, right? I mean, there's bad places, but there's bad places everywhere you go. But because this was my whole perspective of the world growing up into even young adulthood, I thought that is how all of the United States was. And because that was my perspective, I didn't comprehend how people thought that there were so many racist white people out there. Because I went to a school where I was one of the only white kids in the whole school. And, I didn't understand that there were places where some people had the opposite. It's just, I grew up immersed in culture, in the BLK community, and the Mexican community, and the Asian community. And it's I grew up under the other side of the rock. And that created my perspective of the whole world. I thought all of USA was like that. I thought all of USA was culturally diverse. I didn't realize until way later that black people only make up 14% of the population or something around. It's not a big number, right? But the cultures that I grew up immersed in, for for that small number, and somehow I'm like 1 to 3 white kids in a whole school. It's crazy, right? But that colors my perspective. And maybe in somebody who grew up in like with the opposite side of that, in a part of America where it's majority white people, right? They're not going to understand my perspective. They're probably going to think the way that I grew up and the things that I experienced is like some fairy tale. That's why it's all about trying to understand where somebody is coming from. I know you don't want to. I know you just want to hate them and hold them accountable and have anger towards them, and that is understandable. Like, I get it. But that is not how you progress. That's not how you change somebody's mind. You change somebody's mind by opening their eyes, by widening their vision and enabling them to see more than they have ever seen before. And that's what we should all aspire for. Because fighting with fire, especially in this context, it doesn't get you anywhere. If anything, you only reinforce their ideals of the world. I hope that this message reaches you and you at least try to put it into practice of being open-minded and trying to understand where people come from and with the things that they say and their perspective of the world and the hate that has been instilled in them from birth. We're not born like that. We get nurtured like that. And I know you want to hold them personally accountable. But people who are born with that perspective, it doesn't mean they're going to die with that perspective. And you have to keep that in mind, right? It's not about where they are now. It's about where they could be. Love one another. I know it sounds silly and biased, or not biased, naive. But that's what it all boils down to. Nobody knows the experience you have gone through, the things you have experienced. It's the same thing. But nobody knows what you have witnessed and lived through to get to where you are now. And you have to understand that same thing about the person that you're talking to.